Hi, this is Joseph, the Pahrump alien guy, and this is UFO We Want to Know. And for those of you who may or may not know, I have a special guest today. Before I do, I want to let you know that you can see all my videos on YouTube. Just simply go to Pahrump alien guy and look me up. I'm all over the YouTube and the internet. Today I have a great guest. This is the second time I've had the privilege of talking with her. She's a award-winning, I believe an international award-winning author, and I want her to explain exactly who she is and what she's all about. So, Kathy, take it away.
Okay, I'm Kathy Porter, as Joseph told you, and I decided one day, unbeknownst to me, that I would ever be a writer. Became a writer and an author, and thought I was writing one book, and it has since turned into I'm writing book 4, which is plotted out to be an 8-book series, if I stop there. But at the moment, I have the first 3 books out. Earth's Ultimate Conflict is the first book. Second book is Escape from War. And the third book is The Journey. And the 4th book that will be coming out early next year is called Reversal of Prey, P-R-E-Y. And so what I'm doing right now is planning to work on these books until I get to the 8th book. But as I said, I may not stop there because I didn't know I was writing a series. I thought I was writing one book. Unbeknownst to me, I was also a songwriter. When one of my characters in book 2 wanted to escape from Noor, wanted to write a song. He was a musician, and here he is. He's been abducted from Earth. He's living on a foreign planet. All he wants to do is return home, and he's going to write a song about it. And I went to bed that night thinking, how is this going to work out? I don't write songs. I have no idea what I'm going to do on that. And that evening, a tune and the lyrics just started filling up my head. And I sat up in the middle of the night, turned on my cell phone and hit record and sang the song into my cell phone. The next day, when I listened to it, I did change, I think, one word at that time, and it was a done deal. I happened to tell a gentleman I knew that was, he had already done a couple of albums of his own, and I said, how do you get a song made? And he said, well, let me hear the song. And I go, oh my God, I can't sing worth a darn, but okay. I let him listen to it, and he goes, it's done. I'm doing it. And so then came along the book Mother Earth Anthem, which is by my character who was longing for home. And it's all about getting home from a foreign planet and getting back to the big blue pearl called Earth. But I have to say, in the beginning, literally, I didn't ever think I would be a writer because I was, in my youth, totally incapable of reading for the first 3 years of school. And they put me in a program called the SRA program in upstate New York. And this is really paramount to how I became a writer because I was put in this class, and I had to stay in the class until I achieved a level of reading, college level reading. So I got to the point where they said I had to read a chapter book, which was foreign to me. I'm like, I can barely read these little stories, and you want me to read a chapter book. Well, at that time, they just called it a learning disability. Today, they call it dyslexia. And I had no idea I was dyslexic. And then come to find out, when I became an author, I met a lot of authors that were dyslexic. And one particular author said to me, and this is Stephen J. Cannell, who wrote many TV screenplays like Murder, She Wrote and The A-Team. And afterwards, he had talked about being so dyslexic. And I said, man, I went up to him, I talked to him, I said, I thought I was stupid when I was in school. And I said, I didn't know what being dyslexic was like. And he said, Kathy, it's such a blessing. Being dyslexic. And I go, a blessing? And he said, you would never be as creative as you are if you weren't dyslexic. And I guess that's the truth being known, because so many authors are dyslexic. But that particular day when I had to read a chapter book, I was sitting on the ground, on the floor, near a bookshelf, wondering how I was going to get out of here without picking up a chapter book. And I'm looking at all the books and nothing appealed to me. And then I looked down at the book I had my hand on, and it was The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. Okay, so Ray Bradbury's book just inspired me on a long legacy of reading anything that had anything to do with science fiction, especially aliens. But he had a lot of work that didn't have to do with aliens. And that was okay, because his writing was brilliant and I loved it. And I also read Jules Verne's and H.G. Wells. I loved all those old people, old authors. And they kind of guide my work today. But many, many, many years later, when I wrote Earth's Ultimate Conflict, this gentleman, Mr. Ray Bradbury, the first science fiction book I ever read, he endorsed my book. And that was like the ultimate. My genre's rock star endorsed me. So that was
great.
That was great. That's how it all began.
Now, if I can interrupt a little bit real quick, I've actually read this one here through audio. And I can tell you, it took me 12 hours because I stayed in the room, a couple of interruptions, but basically 12 hours. And if I was reading it, I wouldn't be able to put it down. But the audio was so brilliantly done that she sold me. And it was like that could have been a mini-series without an issue.
Right.
So is that what your plans are, to make it a mini-series?
I would love to.
Yeah.
I absolutely would love to, although I came this close to film at one time when I had a film agent who didn't do much for me, so I don't have her anymore. But at that time, then they said it's not really right for film. It would be better as a mini-series. And as a mini-series, I can understand that, because then the people get to know the characters intimately, like Star Trek. Everybody knows the main characters on Star Trek. So then when they take it over to film, it's an easy process to go to film from a mini-series. So I would like that to happen.
Yeah. Well, good luck to you. I know she's going to be showing this to perspectives, but this is a great perspective. If you're thinking about helping Kathy out, even if you read for a half hour, you'll understand what I'm saying, because it just grips you. It really does.
Thank you.
So what I want to do is I want to ask you something. What are your future plans? Even if you continue with this book, do you have other future plans other than the books?
Other than this series of books?
Yes.
Well, I do tinker in other things, yes. I do have some ideas about other... it would still be in basically the same genre, not exactly maybe aliens, but like in book 4 that I'm writing right now, I'm dealing with AI.
Oh.
AI interacting with aliens. And kind of a frightening aspect of what could happen in the future.
Yeah, and some of the questions I have for you, they talk about things that are happening right now and things you put in your books. Yes. So I'll ask you those questions, but go ahead.
Okay, so I guess I'll just give a rundown of each book.
That'd be great.
And then we'll take it from there. But just before I do that, I want to give a shout out to Bobby and Charlie Castaneda for all the help that they have given Joseph.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Okay, so the first book in the series, Earth's Ultimate Conflict, takes place in the near future, where a worldwide pandemic, increased seismic activity, and global warming are all linked to aliens and alien abduction. And because of these issues, President Barbara Unger is looking for salvation for mankind. She's offered aid by 2 alien species. The Greys, we know, are manipulating us. And the Guardians, we have no idea what their ultimate goals are. So, and they're offering conflicting modes of action. So that puts her in a dilemma where she's going to have to decide who to trust, whose hands to place the human race's future in. So that's Earth's ultimate conflict. Escape from Noor, over 500,000 humans have been abducted and taken to planet Noor. Their intent is to use them as lab rats and create a hybrid race. This hybrid race they want to create to live on the planet surface again, which they are unable to do because they have been mutated and unable to do so. So being that the experiments have failed, humans have been abandoned. They're alone, they're afraid, and have no escape to Earth. Hoping that Earth is going to try and reach them, but they have no means of communication whatsoever. So it ends in a real cliffhanger. Then the journey. This book was really, really a tough book to write because, I mean, not that the writing process was tough, because the writing process is always easy to me, but it was quite heart-wrenching in a way. It started out with Amanda, an 18-year-old girl, who overhears a conversation. And this conversation is between 2 alien Jah women that they just recently made peace with this planet after a war that ensued. Over the fact that the Jah wanted planet Noor. They felt they were entitled to planet Noor. Their planet was overpopulated and they wanted to expand there. After all, the Greys, as far as they were concerned, weren't a real species. They were just a subspecies because of their mutation. So the Jah, you know, after the war, made peace. They had all the treaties signed, and suddenly Amanda's behind these 2 Jah women as they're on their way back to a spacecraft, and she hears part of a conversation, which was, and they truly think it's over. Amanda has a capability from when she was abducted they enhanced her telepathic abilities. And it was done by for a specific reason to her, which you'll find out when you read the book. And she heard it, but unfortunately she was voyeuring into somebody's brain and didn't know how to do that, you know, well. And so they knew that she had overheard their telepathic communication. And they both turned around and looked at her and smiled, and as she would describe it later on, it was evil. And so they have no idea if this peace, this tentative peace they have, is going to remain. And it's they still have no means of going home. And there are plenty of other issues with the Nurians, who happen to be the true species from the planet Noor, the Nurians. Several of them, several hundred of the, by now it's several 100,000 of them, had escaped the mutation because they refused the vaccination that gave the mutation to the Greys. And that mutation was supposed to help them. It wasn't, they didn't intend to mutate them. The vaccination mutated them, but its intent was to make them healthier, make them stronger, and make them able to withstand all the things that are happening on Earth, like right now,
Mm-hmm.
you have pollution and environmental changes, and they thought that would help their species, but it was their demise because the mutation has made them frail, and they're really coming towards the end of their existence. The Nurians have come out of hiding, and they want their planet back. They'll fight the Jah, they'll fight the Greys, they'll fight the humans. And so civil war is about to ensue, and they have no means of escaping still. And for book 4, which I'm currently writing, it takes place also in the same on the same planet it begins, but on planet Noor, but an AI force has come into it. And they are thinking of joining forces with the Greys to take over the universe. And when you think about it, they're talking about integrating us with computers already. And if AI integrates with a species that's already intent on harm, we have a real problem. That's what I'm writing about currently.
And there's a similarity. Scientists right now and politicians are arguing that we have cyborgs already. We have people that are actually hooked up to computers in their brains,
Yes.
and they can be manipulated. So you answered, believe it or not, 2 of my questions. And the first one was the book series, and then the second one you had already covered on the 4th. But what's interesting for me is when I was reading them, that is any of this what influenced in your life? Is anything influenced in your life from experience, a possible experience that happened to you? Did that have anything to do with you writing your books?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I like to hear. I think the people for the miniseries, if there's somebody out there, they're going to want to hear that. Okay.
Yes. Okay. In actuality, there's more than one experience, but the primary experience that I worked into Earth's Ultimate Conflict, the very first chapter, is an event that truly happened to me. I was in my bedroom. My husband and I were, I thought, sound asleep, but I suddenly was aware that there was an orb in the room. Because there was I noticed it because there was a light swirling around, kind of like the strobe of a police car, but this is inside my room. And I look over, and about 3 feet from my daughter's crib is an orb. But I'm aware that there's another entity there, but I don't know. I can't even look. I'm terrified. And I'm going to reach over to tell my husband, to wake my husband up, and I just yanked my hand back. I was terrified. It was like I had a warning, an internal warning not to wake him up. So I didn't. And then I heard my daughter sigh in her sleep. And I was like, oh, thank God. She's there. They haven't taken my daughter. And I did something that I just can't imagine myself doing. I rolled over and said to myself, it'll be gone in the morning. It was as if it was being told to me. And I would never, as a mother, do that. I don't think any mother would do that when they have something in the room like that. But, so I depict it in the book, not as me experiencing it, but as one of my characters, Ellen, experiences it. I suppose I could have written a book about things that happened to me. Maybe that'll be in my future. Okay. But, yeah, so I did not want to, at the time, admit that that was an experience that I had. I also had a dream, a very intense dream, that I realized maybe was not a dream. And I had dreamt that I was on a spacecraft, and it was, I would describe it as a cold gray ship. And I was with my husband, and we had been with these 3 children, and we were clinging to each other, and because we were so sad that these children, instinctively, we knew they were our children. And I said to him, I don't want to leave them. And he says, neither do I. But then in our head, we heard, it's time to go. And we were gone. So when I woke up from that, I was very disturbed. It was a very, very disturbing dream. Mm-hmm. And so I also depict that in here as a dream that Ellen has regarding children. And ultimately, she discovers she has 3 hybrid children in the book. So it's kind of like that is in there also. So I just do little snippets of it. I probably will add more, mm-hmm. as I go on.
Yeah, and there are videos out there that people have given testimonial that they have been abducted. They were shown these young kids. Mm-hmm. Their hair wasn't quite right. It was more like hay, large eyes, but they feel like they were attached to those children. Mm-hmm. And there was love. And there's a lot of testimony out there. You can see videos left and right. I know of at least 10 of them that I've seen in the last couple of years. But there's many, many more. And that's so great that you put in the book because people can relate to
People can relate to it. And also, why are they bringing the women and men up there to be with these children? Mm-hmm. It's because when they first, at least this is how the Greys tell it. I mean, when I write this, sometimes I feel like the Greys are telling me what happened. It was because their first round of hybrid children died. They couldn't keep them alive. They died usually in infancy because they were just being watched. They didn't understand the importance of touch and love and caring. So they would bring the parents to the ships and they'd observe them and mm-hmm. see how to connect with the child. And in the end, many of those, I call them nursemates in my book, fall in love with these children. They're not supposed to have emotion, but they breed emotion because of the fact they're getting closer and closer to these children.
Yes. Okay. So let me ask you, in your books, I notice you have as lead characters or main characters, they're women.
Yes.
So I like for you to explain that to the audience.
Well, there was one thing, and I there's a lot of movies out there and books that are science fiction, and I just used to get so annoyed that there were always fair maidens in distress that needed to be rescued, and the men came with their big guns and were ready to kill the invading aliens. And I just wanted to deal with real-life women, what women were really like, and how we would behave. I mean, in any situation that's different or odd or war, alien invasion, alien abduction, whatever it is, women have to handle the day-to-day with the children. They have to find a way to keep normalcy in their lives. And so I decided that the President of the United States would be a woman, President Barbara Unger. And she's a very strong character. When I think of Barbara Unger, I think of Kate Muldrew, who was on Voyager, Star Trek Voyager, because she's got a strong tenacity like that.
And you're answering my next question, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. And on top of that, I have women that they're frightened. They're absolutely frightened, but they're capable of taking care of themselves, finding a way of escape, taking care of the children, and saving Earth if necessary. It's within their capability, and I want women to know how strong they are, and I don't want them to be fair maidens in distress in my book series.
That's great. That's putting it swiftly to the point. And you answered the 5th question, so.
Oh, okay.
On that, so yeah, quit looking over here and do your own thing. Okay, so in creating a new world and species, where do you see, where do you get these ideas from? There's got to be something other than maybe your past, what you feel happened to you. Other than that, where do you think it came from?
Oh, wow. You know, that's a loaded question, because when I sit down and write, I have this little secret thing where I sit down, I put my fingers on the keyboard, say a little prayer sometimes, and then my fingers just start working. And it's as if it all downloads into my brain. As if I'm watching a movie or being told what is happening. I feel like a lot of it is, I mean, I've always had a very good imagination, but this is far beyond my imagination. This is almost as if sometimes somebody's telling me, like my muse or the Greys themselves are telling me what their planet is like and why they are like they are. And so I take that information that they give me, and I tell them, you know, I mean, I feel what they feel, basically, and I write it. And I think that when you come to a particular species, because I have several species that I bring into it, and so each of the species, as they come into the book, it's almost like they tell me. For instance, planet Welcome, which is where the Guardians come from. They call it Welcome because it's the true name of the planet. They said it's too hard for humans to pronounce, and they're a very welcoming group. They told me about their planet, that some people live on the surface, and that surface is very pristine, and they have vineyards and resorts, and a lot of it is left to nature. And many of the people live on the ring of cities that float above the surface, and they live in very plush conditions also. It's absolutely beautiful. You can walk for miles and never worry about traffic, because traffic, you know, is all spacecrafts underneath that you're never interfered with. But these are the kind of details that they kind of tell me as I'm writing. And on Planet Goy, they have a different type of planet where the men basically are very strong and very much in control of situations, but what a woman says goes. Okay? They are very, they want approval from women. They want women to love them. They want women to enjoy everything about their lives. So they're very, very, I guess, gallant. They're very gallant. They just love women. And then I have the species from Chez Galam, and they live mostly in the water. They live in the water and on land, but their planet is primarily water. And they have seasons, okay? They kind of have a long fish face, long flowing, buoyant hair, gills on the side, obviously to breathe underwater, but capable of breathing oxygen. When they smile, their lips roll back and just show gums, no teeth. They eat seasonal algae on their planet. And so they go through different color phases. And you don't want to know anybody from Chez Galam in their purple phase, because that is their phase for recreating themselves. And they're very, what would you call it, very forward to any other species. You know?
It's interesting you talk the way you're talking right now, because thousands of years ago, we actually have statues of the fish people.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes back. And a lot of people say, well, the ant people, people living underground, that really doesn't happen. They don't know that, but yet people talk back in 3,000-4,000 years ago. They talked about it like it was like everyday conversation, like we're talking today. Yeah. And it's really interesting because what you're saying is that the future of this planet, anyway, if we don't blow ourselves up, it could change in 100 years. It seems like every 100 years we change. If you were to take somebody back from, say, 1860, 1870, and you drop them in New York City today, they would literally probably have a heart attack. They wouldn't know where they were at. For one thing, seeing the buildings, the cars, the people yelling at them, get out of the street, all kinds of stuff. They wouldn't believe it. Can you imagine if they took us, all of us right now, me and you, and they dropped us in 3024? Oh, right. We probably wouldn't recognize the surroundings. No. We would see some things that we would recognize, but there would be a lot of changes. And like you were just saying, at 100 years from now, transportation may be underground completely. Yeah. So it's so great that you have put it into your stories here. You can relate to them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the next question I was going to ask you, you haven't answered this one, so I got you before. When's your next book available? Do you know?
I believe it'll be available hopefully January or February of next year. I'm shooting for that anyway. Okay. However, I have an editor that's been sick on and off, so hopefully she's going to be able to get it completed by then. And I finished writing it quickly. Okay, good, good. So I'm pretty much through it. I'm getting through it. But yeah, that's what it's going to depend on, because I happen to be dyslexic, as I said, and so there's a lot of things she has to correct for me.
Now, this is basically your career right now. Absolutely. Is there another career in your future?
In my future?
Yes.
I'm hoping my daughter gives me a grandchild soon. In my future, I will be still writing. I think that I've been through a lot of different careers, Joseph. Yeah. I've done a lot of different things in my life, and I don't think there's anything more satisfying than what I'm doing now.
Okay. Well, that's fair, because through my years, I've gone through from career to career to career, and I used to say to myself, I'm not going to do anything else, and yet it happens. Yeah. And that's the reason why I'm asking you the question. But you're being honest with yourself and the audience, and I think that if this becomes a miniseries, I've asked Kathy before. I'd like to be in the movie itself, because I think I'd be a great actor.
I think you would too, Joseph. Yeah. I don't know how much say I have in it, but we could always try.
So you seem to have a ultimate understanding of aliens as you tell about them in your stories. How is that?
Oh, that's interesting. I really think that it is going to sound a little weird, but I really think they talk to me. I have sometimes I'll sit down and I'll be writing, and I think I'm heading in one direction with the story, and suddenly I'm going another direction, and that's because they have personalities. They have desires. They have dreams. And I used to try and fight that. But Stephen King, he wrote a book called On Writing. And I read the book, and one huge sentence stuck in my head. Out of the whole book, that was the main thing I learned, and that is, you create a character. You created a personality. Don't be a control freak. Let them do what they want. And so I let my characters tell me their story. I have an intimate relationship with them because I allow us to get to know each other. When a new character comes into my books, they come with a huge background that starts downloading in my mind. And that's how I continue their story as they tell me. I understand why they're going that way now.
And I can relate to you in every way, because on my property here, for those of you who have seen my videos, for the last 4 years here now, I'm out, on my property as late as 3 o'clock in the morning. I start going out there at 12 o'clock midnight, and I do my videotaping, and then I come in. I go back out there at 1 o'clock, do some more videotaping, and then I do it at 2 o'clock and then 3 o'clock. And sometimes I'll stand by the fence, and it seems like somebody's talking to me. Now, when it's dark all around you, you can see the stars, and sometimes you can actually see the moon and clouds going through it. It's mesmerizing, but at the same time, I feel like somebody's talking to me.
Telling you what to do.
It's weird because
look this way, look that way. Yeah.
And they've told me, take a picture in the southwest. Pictures, not videos, pictures. And I've got some extraordinary videos to show people, and you can see them on my show. And I can tell you, from the southwest from here, there was elongated crafts that were flying towards Area 51 right over my head, in S4. How did I know that? How did I know? They said turn your camera, because I was facing north, showing me southwest. And that's
that internal conversation they have with you.
And you don't hear it like I'm talking to you now. It just hits you in the head. It says turn around and take a picture.
Yeah.
And I did. And I always take 3 pictures because a lot of scientists, and I've gotten into an argument with some certain scientists, and they'll say, well, 1 picture doesn't tell the whole story. That's why I take 2 to 3.
Right.
And I take them consecutively, real as fast as I can. Boom, boom, boom. But in night vision, it gives you anywhere between 5 and 9 second delay. So it's not like that. It's not a picture like that. You have to wait for the camera, the resolution to hit before you finally take the final picture. And so when you're talking about, you can sense it, hear it in your mind. I feel the same way. So is that a coincidence?
No, that's because I think they are communicating with us all the time.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if you've ever asked this question, and I know that you say sometimes, it's funny when she answers a question. I don't feel that way, because I've had friends say, Joseph, don't say that to too many people. I don't care, my videos prove what I'm saying is true. I've caught over 5,000-6,000 UFOs since I've been living here over Pahrump itself. And if I'm in the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Costa Rica, Hawaii, Alaska, I get these craft flying right over my heads. Now, questions I'd like to ask you, because I think that would be really important if you were somehow put that in your book, your future books. And these are the old questions that I would ask. Do you think there's going to be disclosure? And if you think there's going to be disclosure, how is that going to come about?
To be honest with you, okay, I think the first disclosures that we get is not going to be fake stuff. They're just going to tell us junk. And they're going to do it to appease people. And they're going to do it to throw us off. Because I think there's been a lot of involvement with government and aliens. I mean, after all, it was a peace agreement, a treaty, that they would exchange being allowed to abduct 100 humans and give us some technology. But they've never stopped abducting humans, okay? So they have to cover that up. That's where the Men in Black all came from. They're covering up everything all their tracks and everything that they do. So I think original disclosure is not going to be real. It's going to be a distraction. And then when we finally get disclosure, honestly, I think it's going to be still quite a ways in the future before we get real disclosure. We're going to get certain amounts here and there, but to get the depth of how our government allowed us to be used, and some taken away and never brought back, and some dying from what has happened to them, like internal bleeding and stuff after the children have been taken. I think that they're still going to cover that up as much as they're covering up the Kennedy assassination and other things. They just don't want us to know. Yeah, that reminds me of the Betty Cash story in Texas, where they were radiated from a craft that flew over them. And the son is still alive today.
actually Betty has grandson, and I feel for him a lot because of what they went through. And the government does not acknowledge any of it.
No.
But there was one gentleman who was in one of the 13 Chinooks that were accompanying this craft, and because the craft had emitted radiation over the car, and all three of them got cancer. Her hair fell out, fingernails turned black, the whole 9 yards, radiation poisoning.
And she had bumps all over her skin and blisters.
Tore her up.
Yeah.
And there was a deathbed confession of one of the pilots, and he said that actually happened. The craft itself was a hybrid, and what he meant by that was it was human technology and alien technology within that craft. It failed. It failed. So the fact that you have a pilot, an airman, or whoever it was in that Chinook, it would be Army, so most likely it would be some type of Army officer. It was never brought out exactly who he was, but he wanted to give them some kind of closure. Now, the two ladies, they've passed, but like I said, the son is still alive. I think he's maybe 40, somewhere around there. And I hope that the government somehow has taken care of him, because that was a true incident. But like Kathy was just saying, there are thousands and thousands of people who have claimed they were abducted, and they are uneasy at sleeping at night. It cost them their wives, their husbands, in other words, divorces, because they were embarrassed of them. They couldn't handle them any longer. This is what happens when things are not done correctly. Now, they may have had an agreement with our government to take 200-300 people and give us certain technology to help us along, even in defense. But they're superior to us in every way. And as I told Kathy in the first time I interviewed her, we always call them the visitors. We're the visitors because we're the new people on the block. They've been here for thousands of years. There are cave paintings in France that have been carbon dated. The paintings themselves they used, and they're 40,000 years old. What were we doing 40,000 years old? 40,000 years ago, we certainly weren't doing this. We weren't even in caves, according to mainstream scientists. So how can we say, well, the visitors? I'm sorry. For 76 years, the Air Force has failed to control our skies. We will never control our skies. And that's why they have turned it over to now the Navy. That gets, by the way, 3 times the military budget the Air Force gets. Mm-hmm. So they changed the acronym. It's no longer UFOs. On my shows, I never use their acronym because to me it's phony. All right, you're going to change the narrative, change it somewhere else. They're UFOs, they're unidentified flying objects. Right. And credit to you for putting so much in your books, because people need to hear this. This is happening today. This is 2024. It's happening today, and it's going to happen tomorrow, next year, following year. It's going to keep happening.
What about the original people? The people that originally came out, like I remember Betty and Barney Hill. Mm-hmm. I mean, when they came out and told their story, it was like everywhere. Everybody was talking about it. And all I heard was what nutcases these people were. And they were, subjugated. And people brought them on to talk on their shows and kind of laughed at them. Mm-hmm. They didn't believe them. And I found that so intriguing and so disturbing at the same time. There's somebody that's telling you what happened, and they separated them. They each told the same story, and yet they acted as if they were nutcases, which really, really was. And their niece, is that? I think the niece, yes. Yeah, that, is still out there today talking about it, what had happened to Betty and Barney Hill.
And by the way, she's not doing it to make money for herself. She's carrying on for her aunt and uncle because of the love of the family. I truly believe her. I've seen her on many, many shows, and she never changes anything. It's always the same. She knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, that was like one of the first times when I listened to that, and I knew They were telling the truth, and I knew aliens were real. I remember talking to my dad about aliens, and he was intrigued by aliens also. And as a child, he took me out in the backyard and showed me the constellations and showed me the moon, the Sea of Tranquility. He knew the names of the craters and things like that. And I asked him, I go, do you believe in aliens? Well, I didn't used to.
Well, here's an interesting question for you. I'll tell you mine, then you can tell me your opinion. In the Betty and Barney Hill story, the one thing that convinced me they were telling the truth is when Betty told the doctor that they put a needle in her navel. Okay, 7 years before that practice was happening to women for pregnancy tests. How did she know that? 7 years before that actually happened.
Right.
She's not a doctor or a nurse, so how would she know that? And that's what, to me, was the turning point to think these people were telling the truth. How about you?
Yeah, reading the things that had happened to them, I'm like, it's, and you know, they were telling us that though. Mm-hmm. Before Betty and Barney Hill, yes, they were telling us a little bit of the truth, because Hollywood tells us the truth, okay? They've got it in with the government, okay? So Hollywood had, what was it called, Invaders from Mars, where they put the needle in the back of their head. Yeah. And it's like they're letting us know you're being used, you're being abducted, you know, and then because what is it they say? Because you don't stop it. They told you what they're doing. We have no means of stopping it, but they feel that's like permission then to continue what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's what they do.
So let me ask you this. In today's mainstream scientists, they're using the word when you see a UFO, and people says, no, they were adamant. They said, I saw this thing go by, and it could have been nothing else but a UFO because it was zigzagging. We can't do that. I caught it on film. I'll show it to you. Then they show it. And then they have these debunkers, the skeptics, and they come out and they start talking about how, well, he really or she didn't really see what she saw. And they're using, this is a new go-to for mainstream science and skeptics, and they're saying that they are compression artifacts. Okay? At first they started saying they were artifacts within the videos, the video cameras that we use today. Whether it be, like on my show, I use this phone here for all my shows. And I don't have the best resolution in the world, but believe it or not, I capture UFOs all the time. This is just a cell phone, a 23 Ultra. It's got 200 megapixels, but it gets me what I need to do. The camera systems we're using today are higher resolution, 6K. I use 8K, 5K. I find just as good on these phones as I do those phones. Now, they're saying that these are compression artifacts, and there's all kinds of problems with these optics that we use, whether it be blackness, blurring, color bleeding, banding, jagging, edges, ghosting, motions, all these names. But to put it in a nutshell, they call them artifacts. What do you think about that?
I think it's a bunch of bull. I think, to be honest with you, I mean, you're looking at something going across the sky, and you videotape it, you film it, and then you show it to someone, and they say, oh, that's just an artifact? Well, what did I see before? Was that an artifact? You know, it was actually there. And I find that they always come up with the most unlikely explanations and try and sell it to us. They try and sell it to us. And we're supposed to swallow it, hook, line, and sinker. Well, they do that with sightings also. Anytime somebody has a sighting. Right. Even if they didn't have a camera with them. And they say, well, look at the mark they left in the ground. Mm-hmm. You know, you can see it. Here's proof. Oh, well, this, that, or the other. Or, you know, they just find ways of canceling it. I know that when I was, I was quite young, but I was a new driver, and we watched something literally fall out of the sky and land in a park we called Round Top in Endicott, New York. And suddenly, Round Top was closed. You couldn't get up there. For like 3 or 4 months, you couldn't get up there. When we did get up there, mind you, in those 3 months, we never saw fire. We never saw anything glow. But everything was burned. Everything was burned. And they just said, oh, it was a flash fire. But what about what landed there? What about what came out of the sky? Oh, nothing like that happened, you know. Meanwhile, thousands of us saw it, but they just say, no, it didn't happen. But on the other hand, I'll tell you an incident that happened, which was in, we were in Disneyland. My daughter and I were at Disneyland, and it was late. We closed the park. We were there with thousands of people trying to get out, and we're waiting for trams. Must have been about, you know, 800 or 900 people waiting for the tram. Still other people are trailing out of the park, right? So you got thousands of people there, okay, that were able to see this. My daughter and I are waiting, and there's this kind of a weird feeling, and we all look up. Literally, a huge ship was over us. A huge ship. It covered almost the entire park. Wow. We're looking up, and all of a sudden, boom, it was gone. Okay? And one person in the line went, what the F was that? Really loud, but he used the real word. And we're all like, nobody said a word. We all got on that tram and went to the parking lot, and nobody said a word. Isn't that weird? But I looked it up. I found a phrase that they call it. It's called the Oz effect. It's like, we're observing you, and we know you observed us, but boom, you're not going to be able to talk about it.
And the story, when I first interviewed you, the first time I told you the story of mine, similar to that. I was flying over, going west to Los Angeles from Southern California, passing Ontario International Airport. And I can't tell you, I was driving, I have a co-driver, and for some reason I just looked up, and I saw this big, huge, black, triangular object, no lights. Everybody says, well, I see a light in each corner. There was no lights on this thing. But the reason why I knew it was triangular is that there's a little bit of clouds up there, and you can see the outline of it. So I told my co-driver, I said, and I won't say his name because he told me that he would always deny it. So I said, hey, look up here, because I was driving. I said, look up here and tell me what you see. So he looks up, and he says, go, man, go. Here's the interesting part. After he said that, we didn't talk all the way into LA. We stopped talking. We just drove there. We got to work, and I don't even remember getting to work. I remember the only thing I remember was telling me go, and then I was making my left-hand turn to go into the facility. That's the last time I remember. And then we didn't talk about it. And then 6 months later, I was on the computer, and they were talking about these craft, wedge-shaped craft that people had seen, and it was actually the Belgium wave, and it was on there, and I told him, come on over. I said, take a look at that. And he goes, that's what we saw. That's what we saw. But, you know, we didn't talk about it.
No, they silenced you. It's called the Oz effect.
It's incredible.
They do something.
Yeah, they do something to you. So I can relate to that. And, you know, we're just two people. And I didn't tell Kathy about my stories, and I'm hearing that for the first time. And if there's just two people here doing an interview, can you imagine how many people done the same thing we have? So if you've had an experience like that, get in touch with Kathy or myself and talk to us. Let us know, because it's so important for people to get that out of their system. And it doesn't matter if your family and friends think you're a nut. That's fine. I've been called a nut for a long time, and I love it. The problem is we don't have to prove anything to the government or any of these scientists. They have to prove it to us. And by telling us that it didn't happen, it was a dream, it's an artifact, they have to prove it to us, because you can talk to scientists today and you can go over all their excuses and say they'll tell you you didn't see this wasn't happening, this is not what you saw. But if then you ask them this question, okay, if I didn't see that, what did I see? They cannot answer the question. They cannot and will not answer the question. Now, they'll probably go back and start figuring out, hey, we got to start telling these people something. But right now, you talk to anybody in mainstream science, they will not answer that question.
Yeah, but mainstream science's truth is from whoever they're being paid by.
Exactly.
They don't really have, it's not real science, pop science, or paid for science, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I was in an argument with a NASA scientist, and near the end, I told him, I says, well, you're going to say what you're going to say because you're getting paid by NASA. NASA gets their budget from the Defense Department. So it trickles down, and you're only going to give me information that you're allowed to give. But it's so funny because there's been so many people who have passed away, and just before they passed, they made deathbed confessions. Yeah. And we're talking about generals, admirals. We're talking about people that were in the know, people that had seen actual craft, and before they left this earth, they wanted to leave a message. And thank goodness for those people. You know, they had in their heart to become real solid Americans and say, you know, I'm going to be leaving this earth. I want to leave with a clear conscience. And they gave beautiful deathbed confessions. You can look them up. There are a lot of them out there. And, you know, I hope that someday I'll be able to see disclosure. You know, I'm not sure if it's going to happen during my lifetime. But I certainly appreciate Kathy and her books because she's got such a passion for writing and continuing writing. And I hope it goes past 8. I hope you go 20.
It may. But, I mean, when you talk about disclosure to me is what they're telling me to write. Because sometimes that's how I feel it is. They're telling me to write it. Because I don't think that I mean, I know we look at aliens, we think of them as monsters, we think of them as harmful. And I don't think they're all like that.
No. Do you believe in the Federation?
I do believe there's entities out there like the Federation. In my books, I have the Galactic Union, which is kind of like what they told me it was. The Galactic Union is an entity that, if there's disagreements between other planets, this is where they come to, and this is where they decide the issues and create peace and keep planets from going to war with each other. So that's the Galactic Union. We also have the Galactic Alliance, and the Galactic Alliance is primarily for trade and for getting permission to land on other planets, land on foreign soil. I think an interesting thing about the Galactic Alliance is once you enter the Galactic Union, the Galactic Alliance sends people to your planet to discover what you have to trade and what you could use, you know. I mean, they use a lot, there's capitalism out there in space, but they do some trading, and they do find out what it is that you have that is desirable. And for instance, they have on planet Shea Galam, they have some extraordinary scents, you know, fragrances, and they also have a great ability to create some very interesting cocktails, spirit cocktails that can really knock your socks off. And then I have another entity of people. They have a way of attaching a hologram to a woman's face, so we look like we're totally made up, but we don't have makeup on because they don't think that makeup is good for skin. So you have these beautiful long eyelashes in the right color and the right cheek color and lip color, and it will last several weeks. And so that is something that many of the planets immediately wanted to purchase. They wanted to have that. And they also would help Planet Goy, who wants Disneyland on their planet. So they help them make those contacts and have that happen. So and I do believe that there's a federation of some sort out there. But I can't imagine that they wouldn't also have an alliance that would work out trade deals and merchandise deals and helping planets market to each other.
Do you think they were part of the protectorate? Because I understand that a lot of people believe that the Federation that is out there, they call it the Federation of Planets and Earth, because we're not a spacefaring world. We're under their protection. Do you believe that's true?
I do. As a matter of fact, because the Greys were abducting us and overutilizing us. They were brought before the Galactic Union, and I believe things like this have happened. I'm not fed this information for no reason,
Yes.
okay? So they were brought before the Galactic Union, and the Galactic Union knew that the Greys had they were much more powerful. They had a lot heavier duty weapons and things, so they couldn't fight them and stop them. So they insisted that the Guardians, every craft that entered Earth, a Guardian had to accompany them to make sure they weren't doing harm and damage. Well, the Greys didn't think they were harming or damaging us because everything they did to us, they put a screen memory. You never remembered what happened. But the Guardians, they really weren't down with that. And then you have some of the Greys have become attached to humans. They've watched us enough and feel that it shouldn't be happening, and they're starting to align themselves with the Guardians to stop it.
Yeah, and some people don't believe that these superior beings have emotions, or they cannot be manipulated or changed. But in 1952, we had a crash where we had what they called EB1, and we had it for 5 years. And according to the handler, and this is what they used to call the people who would communicate with the aliens, the handler would ask a specific question over and over and over again. They didn't get the answers until years later on, just before he passed. And I believe it was 5 years before he passed. It turned out the alien, EB1, started to have a feeling for this handler of his, almost like a family. And even though they never showed emotion, when they talk about these aliens, they said that they don't show tears, they don't show emotions, they don't lower their brow. If they had hair there, just lowering it, their mouth, nothing moved. So there's no emotion there. But they show it in a different way. And what's interesting is the handler, and this might be something interesting for your book in the future, the handler himself would have to keep a straight face because there was cameras all around it. He had handlers himself. So in other words, he was the handler for the being, but yet he was being handled by somebody else in the intelligence department. And if he looked like he was communicating with this being, they would know it. So the being would tell him, just keep looking forward, like nothing's happening, like I'm not communicating with you. And he would communicate with him. And I know that one of the handlers who had since passed, he was an Army sergeant, and he tells his story. You can look him up. I can't remember his name offhand, but he said that he got emotional when the EB1 died. How do you get emotional from an alien being if you're not in communication with them in a different sense? So that to me is interesting. And every time I see these different stories, I always come back to her book, Kathy's book. I always come back because I got so enveloped in it that whatever I talk about on my shows, you always come back into my mind.
Well, because I've written about so much of it, because the Greys were not allowed to use emotion. Okay, after they mutated, they were basically sterile. They couldn't propagate themselves again, and so now they've been ordered by the elders not to use emotion. They lived solitary lives and celibate lives, and they lived in little tiny apartments underground because they could no longer live on the surface. And any contact with humans, especially when they brought 500,000 humans to their planet to use, they suddenly realized these people, they care about each other, they love each other, they look after each other. And what are we? They begin to see that they have. I mean, maybe took less than 5 years actually before they felt that emotional bond. But I think that anybody that is attempting to be or has been born as someone that is emotionless, even Spock on Star Trek, okay, emotions begin to happen because if you've got a heart and you've got blood pumping in you, no matter what color it is, you have the ability to have emotions because it comes from the cellular level. I think it just breathes within you. And it's unnatural not to have emotions. So when the Grace in Planet Noor in the second book, Escape from Noor, many of them are starting to have emotions, and they're trying to have relationships, but they have no idea
How to do it.
how to do it. And because of that, for the first time in forever, suicides are happening because they can't deal with rejection. They don't have to deal with emotions.
Yes.
So it's very sad.
Yeah. Now, you said that earlier in the conversation, you said that you felt you were in a ship.
I was on a ship.
On a ship. And you said that you felt it was kind of
A cold grayish.
cold. I was, on one of my videos, I recently had made a comment, and I got some feedback from a gentleman, and I can't use their names because I shouldn't even say what I'm saying, but they claimed to have worked at Area 51 or S4. And what I had said in my video was that these ships are not made. They're not welded together. They're not bolted together. They're grown. Okay? They're plants. To us, they're plants. And if you wonder why, you hear people say, well, I couldn't find a seam when the door opened. And yet I know it was here. Just like when the world stood still, the movie. They couldn't find the seam to it, yet it was there. The interesting thing about it is you get a flower and you rip it, then put it back together again, it almost seals itself.
Yes.
Okay? Same way. Well, I had a gentleman, as I said, I'm not going to name him. He told me that you're onto something. And he said, keep up the good work. And his wife slapped him in the side of the arm and said, you shut up. You're not supposed to be talking to especially people like him who have videos out. And he goes, oh, I'm ready to go anyway. And grumpy old man. But this was about 6 months ago, so I don't even know where he's at. He was some kind of a engineer. I believe he was a I'm trying to think of the name of that. Anyway, he was one of these construction engineers, but he worked with many different elements of higher technology, in some cases nanotechnology, where he had to work in areas where we don't normally put things, but since it's in the nanotechnology, we're talking about very, very small areas. And so you have these engineers from all walks of life who have to now learn how to make things even smaller at such a level that you can't see it with the eye. The trained eye can't see it. And it's so interesting. But I talked to him before his wife got a hold of him, and he gave me a lot of information. And he said, keep doing what you're doing. He said, you're in the right direction. And when you were mentioning that you could feel like you were in a ship, and it felt like that, that's what came to mind. And the other thing is, as far as seeing UFOs, I understand that a lot of people say, well, you're going to see holograms. And holograms are going to be the thing that scares the daylights out of a lot of people, because the larger you can make the craft right over you, the more intimidating it can be. Right. And then that hologram can make that ship stay there and look real as anything, and all of a sudden it vanishes, takes off, without any wind, without anything moving around you. So is it a hologram, or is it actually a craft that is in our atmosphere, it's not touching our atmosphere, and that's the reason why it can vanish. Now, in some of my videos, and I'm sure that in your books, you're gonna probably see a lot of that from what these aliens are going to be talking about, they're not touching our atmosphere. These ships are not touching our atmosphere, and I've proven that many times before. In some of the videos, you can see all kinds of magnetic field around these craft. You can also see plasma around these craft. And no matter how I try to erase it with my filtering systems, it's an impossibility because it displaces atmosphere around the craft itself. And in some cases, you'll see the craft going up, but if I take a still of it, it looks like it's coming down. In other words, the round shape is on the bottom, and the flat is on the top, but it's going up. And I've got that over hundreds and hundreds of videos just like that. And I always tell the people on my short videos, take a look at this. Which way is it going? And then look at the still. It looks like it's going in reverse. It's not. It's going up. It's so interesting. But these craft are not touching our atmosphere. I've said that over and over and over again. They do not touch our atmosphere, and that's why you don't hear a sonic boom. And that's why when they go in the water at Mach 1, Mach 2, they don't make a splash because they don't touch the water. They don't touch the atmosphere. That might be something. Might be something for your book.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. You know, have you ever noticed that? I mean, there's creatures in space. Okay, that aren't attached to planets. Okay. First time I ever noticed that was when they lost the they had that big long it was supposed the tether. They lost that and all those creatures
were around it.
That were round, and they had that little cutout on them. It looked kind of like sand dollars. Yeah. They looked like sand dollars in space. Well, I have them in Escape from.
Oh, that's great.
Noor. They're in there because they are actually kind of like the fish of the sea. Okay, and they eat debris, space debris.
Space debris. Oh.
And they were calling them debris. They called these creatures debris. And a lot of people were kind of thinking maybe they were spacecraft or something, but they were translucent. You could see through them. And I remember just thinking about them. Okay. And suddenly it came into the book because they came around. And that's when I learned that they were actually, they were called space biscuits by some of them because they go around, they follow ships, and they eat the debris. Not large debris, unfortunately, but they do eat debris in space, and they are friendly. They're friendly. So when they came around, and they're curious. So when they came around that tether, they were kind of misunderstood, and it has had, I can't remember the name of the astronauts that were on that craft. Can you?
I'm trying to remember them as you're talking.
I can't remember, but they
Musgrave?
I think you might be right.
Yeah, he's the one that saw snakes in outer space.
In outer space,
it was on one of my shows. I did a whole special on him. And Scott Musgrave.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And he saw the snakes. And you want to hear something really funny? I was out I'm trying to think of not too far from here, and I was facing north, and lo and behold, I got a silver snake in the air, and it was just coming over the mountain, but it was a snake. It looked like a sea snake.
A sea snake, yeah.
And it's shaped like, and it's in one of my shows, I can't remember which one offhand, but it's interesting. That's why I did his special on him, because I witnessed it for myself. And if I've seen this, and there's a snake in the atmosphere, our atmosphere, I can believe he saw one in outer space.
Absolutely, because there are living creatures in outer space that live in the vacuum of space.
Yes.
And we've, to those that don't believe that we have been to the moon, and they have seen things on the moon.
Yeah, they're not going to tell us.
They won't tell us.
So I'd like to ask you one last question. And the reason why I'm asking you this particular question, for those of you out there, I want to let you know that Kathy is diverse in a lot of different areas, not just in her book series. She knows an awful lot. So I like to get her take on what happened in 1942 when we had the Battle of Los Angeles. What happened at that particular time was so revealing that we should have been told about it. But I know there was war nerves. We had just got attacked in Pearl Harbor by the Japanese, and they shot over 1,400 12.8-pound anti-aircraft shells at an object that was up in the air. Now, at first they said that it was a balloon that came untethered and it was floating. If you're going to shoot over 1,400 rounds at a balloon, you can't bring it down. That's a sorry military.
Right.
So I don't buy that. I don't buy that in any way. The other thing is they kept saying that Dwight D. Eisenhower was in charge at the time. No, he wasn't. It was General George C. Marshall. He was in charge at the time. I'm glad they finally corrected that mistake. They've had it for so long that they said Eisenhower. Eisenhower was just barely an administrator at the time. So they're starting to come out now and talk about the Battle of Los Angeles. And by the way, they did recoup that craft over Santa Monica. They did recoup it. They said that it went past towards the ocean going on a westerly flight. That was a lie. They actually found it. Some claim that it went into Wrightwood, California. And,
well, it came right down the coast. It kept coming right down the coast. It went for miles and miles and thousands, millions of people saw it.
And we're never going to get the truth because FDR asked him, well, what's going on in California? What's going on? Is it the Japanese? Are they off the coast bombing us? And they gave him a sorry story that it was a balloon, and he died thinking it was a balloon. So what do you think about that?
I think it was an actual ship that came down, and I think it may have been because Pearl Harbor had just been attacked.
Mm-hmm.
It had just been attacked, and it appeared over Los Angeles. I'll never forget the picture of all those lights on it. You have all these lights on it. Everybody can see it. They're shooting at it. You don't know what it is, and you're shooting at it. Right. I didn't understand that at all. There was no attempt at communication, none whatsoever. So that taught them they can't trust humans. Okay, they can't come near humans. They're going to shoot their weapons at us, as miserable as those weapons are, because they can't touch us.
And remember, that was 5 years before Roswell.
Right. And it just kept going and going and going and going, and people kept seeing it, and they were chasing after it with weapons. And then it did get brought down then?
Yeah, I believe I believe they found the craft. They damaged it enough to bring it down. Because in some cases they said that it was peeing off the craft. In some cases they said it was absorbing because they couldn't see where the round went. But when they used imagery on that spacecraft, it was shaped like the iconic flying saucer.
Iconic.
Just looked like.
But stop and think, Joseph. What if that craft was here? Not because it was coming to see what we are or what Earth is or what happened in Pearl Harbor. What if they were in trouble? What if they needed help? And we did nothing to communicate with them? We just absolutely attacked them with not one thought about who could be in there. Obviously, they're powerful. They could have taken us down. They could have killed thousands of people.
Easily, yes.
But that's a sad statement from humanity.
Yes, and the reason why I asked you that question is because we found that more UFOs were seen during World War II than any other war in history. Yeah, and that's why I wanted to ask you that. Kathy, we're going to wrap this up, but I want to give you the final word about your book series, and so I'm giving you this time to do that.
Thank you. My book series, The Great Guardian series, is available on Amazon. You can order it in bookstores. It's also the first book is available in Audible, and hopefully the other books are going to get made into Audible. But that fantastic narrator, Peter, in Earth's Ultimate Conflict, he just doesn't have time to do the audiobooks anymore. which makes me very sad. And I have not found anyone that I feel is as good as him yet, but I will. I'll keep trying till I find somebody. So it is available, and book 4 will be coming out probably January, hopefully no later than February of next year. And I have music on Amazon. My digital song, Mother Earth's Anthem, is available on digital Amazon. I would just like to say, if you've never read science fiction before, especially women, because women tend to shy away from science fiction. I have mostly male readers because men read science fiction far more than women do, but I wrote this primarily for women. I have nothing offensive in there. Strong women that handle the weirdness of aliens and the fear, and they have to make life normal for the children that they have in, or that they're in charge of. So I would say, if you've never delved into science fiction before, this is one I think you would enormously appreciate, especially given what's going on in society today. And if you have any other questions, on my website, grayguardians.com, it's GRAY, guardians.com. Go to my website, and there's a contact area, and please contact me, and I'll be glad to have a little conversation with you if you like.
Well, thank you for coming. She came all the way from California, and I'm in Pahrump, Nevada. So she's got a long drive back, so we're going to wrap this up. But you can watch this video. This is October 19th, 2024. So this is a new video. This isn't something that was made 4 or 5 years ago. This is a new video. I would hope that there's somebody out there that would take this series seriously and give Kathy a call, contact her. This would be a great series, mini-series, and I'm hoping that this will come to fruition for her. And she's a great lady, a great author. And when she does her last book, and she goes on to her next book, I'm hoping to continue having these conversations with her that time. I want to thank you for joining us here on UFO We Want to Know. My name is Joseph, and on behalf of Kathy and myself, we want to thank you for watching.
Thank you.